Do that? You didn't even ask. Yeah, I've lost a ton of work, but you can always animate it faster the second time. At least that's what I tell myself. Just make sure I post all this stuff right.
Is that after you cry?
Yeah, there's a lot of crying involved in my process, apparently. This character's really fun. I like this guy. What's his name? Jack. Perfect.
In your rhythm, how much of it was mocap?
None.
Really?
Yeah. We had mocap reference on Hulk that they were like, use the mocap, and then you'd bring the mocap in and you'd be like, I cannot use the mocap. You know, it worked, but it was super messy. The proportions didn't really work for the, because it was all like fighting. I did a lot of stuff between Hulk and Abomination, and it was like, okay, that's cool to look at, and I can learn things, and at times I would do kind of like this. I'd have a second Hulk with the mocap on it and be like, all right, I can kind of see what they're going for with that. And then the same thing where you're editing and you're making the choices on what pose to use, when to exaggerate things, working out clarity, because I mean they're just moving around like human beings. They're not doing it to camera, because at that point they didn't even know what the cameras were going to be, and it just was more fun. Yeah. Without the mocap.
What did you think about the Hulk and Avengers compared to the Incredible Hulk?
Man, they did an awesome job. That was incredible. Sorry, guys. Those are my jokes. I thought that was the best Hulk so far. He just entertainment-wise, I thought they kind of nailed it more than any of the other Hulks. They made him funny and relatable-ish, which is a huge challenge, to not just make him just basically a big green gorilla. Sorry, focusing. And some of the animation in that was insane. There's this, and just like the stuff where he was jumping between buildings and stuff, just the weight, and again like the connectivity of all the different pieces and how his heavy torso related into everything, and the effects, and like, phew, those guys are good. They're really good. And that's I like doing that kind of animation too. I really enjoy all of it. On Big Hero 6 we're gonna have everything. Acting, subtle, broad. There's a little bit of everything, which I'm really excited about. There's progressively less crying as the story develops. But it's good. I mean, it means there's.
It's not the audience.
It's Magla. Is anyone completely bored? That's good. Just lie to me. Make me feel better about myself. You don't need any crying. All right.
Do you put any squash and stretch in your poses? Is that like another pass?
I do. Since I'm IK, I don't really care. Like, it's just kind of self-editing. Like, don't do that. You know what I mean? But like any of these poses, I'm really looking at like where do the hips go? The hips go up, so that's going up. This is going up more graphically than that is. Is that because of the shoulders, or is that because, should I do that with shoulders, or should I do that with a little bit of this guy? So that I'm getting, again, kind of the pull of one part into another part. as we start breaking this down, that's going to be a squash, you know, where this stuff I will most definitely squash that. I'm not sure if do we have scale on this stuff? Ooh, yeah. We'll be doing some of that. Can I scale any of this? We'll see. But I'll be squashing and stretching that stuff around, mostly in the breakdowns. It won't be quite as apparent in this at this stage. But I don't do it as a second pass. Again, differences between Nathan and I. You know Nate. He is he layers on squash. He likes offsets on everything, so that he can do all of his squash, and he separates out his rotations and things. That just sounds like a lot of work to me. I mean, I'm lazy, but I prefer just to do it all in the pose and kind of muscle through it later. I'm not super clean on my foot stuff either.
Do you ever zero out like any of your controls between the different poses, or do you try and keep like the same locations?
It just kind of depends on where I'm at. For the chest there, I did. Just because I don't want it to be too messy. But it kind of depends. I mean, it depends on the control as well. Hands, I'll zero out a lot, at least at work, because we have pose page and stuff like that, which is similar to what Marlon has here. We have a lot of hand poses, so I like to use those because I don't particularly like posing hands, but I think when hands are done really well, it shows a lot, but it's just a lot of work, so I like to have a really robust hand library ready to go. Let's exaggerate this quite a bit. But for the most part, no, it's just about the pose.
Take a break in like 10 minutes. Cool.
Word up.
Hopefully the pizza will have alright. You can eat upstairs. It's air conditioned, so if you want to, it's pretty toasty.
Yeah, man, what is the deal lately? It has been smoking hot. So again, exaggerating for later. I know I'm gonna want to push that pose. I mean, it's fairly pushed here, but it's gonna be way cooler. And that's why we do animation, right? To get, I mean, it's squash and stretch, your point. I'm gonna have to fix that constraint while you guys eat too, because this is driving me fucking crazy.
I think you have pee on.
Yeah, and I think I also constrain it to the wrong part of the rig. I need to constrain it to like a meta or something like that. kind of hacked it together a little too quickly. What I'm looking at right now is hips, since this is a pretty complicated move as far as leading and following and breakdowns that we'll get into in a bit. I'm going to focus more just on the keys of the hips. So there's kind of the bottom of that apex there is semi-related to the flattening out of the foot back there. So I'll do a key. I'll do a key there.
Like, what would your advice be for somebody starting out in the studio, like Disney or this guy? Like, what should somebody either starting out avoid or not do or do? Or
I would say talk to everyone. Build a rapport with people, not just to make friends, which is good. But to have that person, those people that you can go to, that you can ask advice from, that you can bounce ideas off of. I think familiarizing yourself with the work that's being done, the work of others. We have a tool at work. It's called DPix. And it is, we can watch everything that's going on. See it. Rhythm, it was called Eve. Is that right? Anyway. And I don't remember what it's called at Sony. But it's where you can watch everything that's being done in the studio. I troll it every day. Especially when I was on Big Hero 6 while all these guys were doing Frozen. And for me as supervisor, I want to make sure that I'm staying relevant with, who's doing what, who's, pushing what, who has what kinds of shots, and who's being successful at what, who needs an opportunity to try something different, whatever else. But just knowing who to go to for, hey, you did this really well, how did you do that, and people like compliments. But just knowing who to go to for information, asking them how they came up with their ideas, getting them to shoot video reference for you, what have you, I think is super important. As far as this video reference is concerned, this might be as far as we take it. I don't keep it through the entire process. That's also one of my big things that I had to kind of force myself to do, because it is easier to have that guidance there all the time. But you become so dependent on it, and you stop making choices, which I think is the fatal flaw of video reference. So I might keep it around for our breakdowns here. But just some of them, and then it's going to be gone for the rest of our time. What did I just do? I'm also looking for appeal in poses, just where you can kind of push that line of action. It's a little linear and boring in my pose. Kind of same thing here. Actually, probably want to get that S-curve through there. It's there. It's not quite as pretty. You can kind of push it a little bit further, have a little more fun with it. But I'm looking at, generally angles and things that I can pull, and also thinking about watching the arcs already. Even if it's 12 frames apart, you're already establishing where these arcs are going to go. So that when I start splining, I don't have to change the poses. We'll try to do some isolate select stuff when we get to spline. But what I like to do is, hide the arms, hide the legs, just spline the torso. Because if I'm not changing the poses too dramatically, if I'm not changing stuff too dramatically in spline, I'm just polishing things, I know that the poses work because I spent all that time up front here, which is just going to making that workflow way faster later when we can just polish just the chest and then just the chest with the legs and just the chest with the legs and the arms and then just, and then you can turn off the body and do just the face or whatever else, and you know that everything else works, and then you do a pass of making sure that it all ties together. Because the worst thing is when you have, some people will work that way and it's very clear that like this arm was animated, it's very pretty, but it has nothing to do with what else is going on. Oh man. Shit. That's what I wanted. So a lot of people, when they see my workflow, are kind of like, isn't that just rotoscoping? To which I say nay. Yes, it sort of is. At this stage, it is. It is not, again, that's why I'm saying, like, make a choice, make the changes. But yeah, I am 100% stealing poses just to get my blocking in there and to communicate that idea to the director as quickly as possible. But then the breakdowns, the exaggeration going forward, that's where we're going to make it animation, That's driving me crazy. I also, I know a lot of people will like rotate the arm wherever. I don't know why. Maybe it's a holdover from Rhythm where we literally couldn't do that. What happened? There we go. I don't really do that. I keep the elbow in pretty much one axis. Doesn't really matter. I think, whatever you want to do at work. Actually, it seems like in this rig too. Do you have like PSDs in the elbows? Or is it just nice weighting?
I think both.
At work we have blend shapes, corrective blend shapes for, bend the elbow, and it defines.
What did you call them? PS what?
I probably shouldn't. I don't know if I should say.
Oh,
I just don't know if it's. They're called PSDs. No, it's it. Like they do like SIGGRAPH papers and shit on that. It's
You know what the stands for?
pose space deformations. I just learned that like a month ago when we had a big debate on what it stood for. Pose space deformations, which is basically saying you pose it and it blends in a blend shape. It's a really fancy tool that a bunch of our tech guys wrote. I think for Bolt maybe. And has just been kind of improving ever since. But that the reason for that tangent is keeping it on one axis dials in the right blend shape. You go the other direction, there is no blend shape. so can't cheat quite as easily. I'm going to want to push that pose.
Do you do not scrub through your poses to kind of identify any gimbal locking going on? Or
Never.
never?
I really, don't care.
Okay.
Gimbal sucks. We've all had gimbal, but the Euler filter is pretty awesome. I haven't run into too many situations where I was completely screwed, and I usually break it down to the nth degree. So, and at Disney, the way our motion blur works, it doesn't necessarily matter if you're popping over one frame because it bakes out the geometry. So it's literally just vertice to vertice. So it doesn't actually know the curves by the time it's rendering. It's kind of fun than really pulling my head back. But no, I don't worry about that too much. That might bite me on this, but I don't think so. I think we'll be all right. Such a dick.
That little heel turn?
That's why I liked it though. That floating foot, I think is.
Booyah!
It's such a dick move, but like.
Mic or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, I'm out. But I'm modernizing Gene Wilder. That's all. Gene Wilder's dropped the mic. Wonka out. Boosh. That's not what I want. Oh, a little bit. No, let's do toe pivot. No, toe spin. There it is. A little bit of that action. Sliding feet are always difficult in CG. Like as realistic as this looks, if you animate it exactly like that, it looks like you're on ice. So we'll have to figure that out as we go. Don't pay attention to his head. Where are you? We should actually push it. Let's make him even more of a dick. This might present some gimbal issues, but as far as spinning him 180, but we'll see. I do like to keep the neck semi-realistic in its alignment, even if it's exaggerated. As far as just like how it flows through the spine, even though this is pushed out pretty far, I try not to like break it too much. You know, the neck does have the ability to do this kind of stuff, and I'll do a lot of that too. But I try to keep, you know, not gonna like, let's not mess up a pose. I try not to do something that's too like, too ridiculous, you know what I mean? Just to get the head where I need it. I try to keep it still feeling like it's the real muscles and stuff like that in there. Is there a spread? Bow. Thumb spread. Scrunch? Scrunch. Ooh. That's exciting. Peace. I don't like, this is personal preference as well, not a huge claw person. The last digit, I think, is usually overcranked in most animation. Like we don't claw very much. You actually kind of keep that fairly. It's a lot more in the base joint than I think a lot of times we do in animation. We tend to, like I said, we tend to grab everything and rotate them. I try to keep it a little bit more to the first two joints to feel a little bit more natural. That's why. Dug myself in a hole there.
When you're doing reference, are you ever doing shots without the dialogue playing in the background?
Yes.
When you're acting? So you're
Yeah.
doing that?
Especially because of my workflow and the retiming in Maya, I will act it out. I'll actually say the words aloud, although usually quietly because there's people around. Just so that I have my timing, what feels natural for me.
Is there a preference then, without?
It's not actually. It depends. I mean, sometimes I will. Like sometimes I'll do both within the same kind of reference session. Also, especially if there's an opportunity. There's sometimes opportunities on the film to pitch that as like an idea. On those Ralph shots I was talking about with Gene. Gene says, "What did you want, Ralph?" And Ralph says, "I don't know. I was just tired of living alone in the garbage." But the way it was originally edited, it was, "What did you want, Ralph? I don't know." And they were like right on top of one another. And like when I was acting it out, I couldn't naturally like get that "I don't know" out without some like I wanted some like searching moment. So I actually chopped off some of the Gene shot and rearranged some stuff and repitched it with that video reference in there that I did without dialogue, and then I just acted out the shot saying the words myself, and it went over pretty well. And I think it added a little bit of a feeling of loss to Ralph. So I'll do both. This one I had it on the entire time. Also, I know this line, through my core, because this is like my childhood favorite film. So again, I'm kind of looking for hips or contacts. So this was apex of hips going up. And it was kind of generally apex of foot at the top of its Y arc, what will eventually be my Y arc, which looks like this right now. It's very clear. This will be like this. And every once in a while, as I'm blocking it out, especially once I start breaking this down, I'll switch to linear just to get the general impression of what my curves are going to look like, to make sure I'm not doing anything too crazy. But just so you guys know what I'm looking at right now. No. Foot bank. Let's do foot bank. I don't touch pull vectors very much at all. I like to keep it in foot space because again I like it to feel a little bit more real. You can't really separate your knee that much from the angle of your foot. So as you've probably seen, I haven't really touched the pull vectors hardly at all through this, and if I do want to cheat it, I'll use the bend bow more than anything, or like a twist if the rig has a twist control. I'll do that to point the knee rather than move the pull vector around, just because I don't like having to maintain that curve.
You guys want to take a break now, and hopefully pizza will arrive, and then eat later, or you want to keep going until pizza arrives? So just to make sure nobody
Is anyone dying?
is getting antsy, just going to walk around a little bit. You good? We'll wait for pizza? Yeah.
These arms I'm probably not going to follow the reference very much because they're a little stiff. If you watch my left arm and through here, it's really boring. So I'll probably, as we start breaking it down, that arm's going to change a couple times, I'm sure. Just to, I can already, whoops. Imagine that I'm going to want to kick this out a little more just to get a little bit more of the momentum from that. Just looking at that arc going through there, getting these things to break up a little bit. Beth? Not what I wanted. I like rolling the foot as well as it plants. It's a pain in the butt to maintain because no rig I've ever had does exactly the magic that I want for all that. So it's always something you have to kind of finagle as far as that that roll down in and making it feel nice and squishy and real. But I think it adds a lot. There it is. We'll probably have something over here-ish that'll zero out.
Another thing I see that animators do sometimes is that they'll lift their feet way too high.
Yeah.
Look at video reference.
Yeah, big time.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, we see this all the time. I mean, even at work or anything else, you start to get like that animation walk. What am I doing wrong? Where your passing is like up in here, and because that's what Animator Survival Kit said to do. Like nothing against Richard Williams. That book's amazing, and that's how I learned to animate. And that works at times for certain characters, but we see this all the time. Where like that's a passing, for a run. That's a run. This is not a walk. A walk is going to be, and I probably have my foot up, not that high. We're lazy people by nature. Like human beings don't want to do anything they don't have to do. Which is why we trip over things a lot. It's because we don't pick up our feet. But I think you can still get, that's why I liked this frame, you can get interesting shapes if you're looking for them that don't have to be these big, high, cartoony, floppy steps, unless that's the character. Some characters that's super appropriate. King Candy, for example. Characters with ginormous feet and little tiny legs. Prep and Landing, those characters were the worst to do walks with. Their foot is longer than their leg.
Same with Ralph.
Ralph was hard. Vanellope didn't really have toes. She was just kind of like that hoof shape. That was challenging. King Candy, we got to play around with that flippy foot walk. That was some of the most fun. The Ichabod Crane walk. Eric Goldberg did this. Is that online? The Eric Goldberg 2D test? Yeah, and he spins his tie. Did you guys see that one?
They was looking at that, like the Disney animated app.
Oh yeah, that's right. That was awesome when he pulled that one out. It was like, okay, I'm putting that in the film somewhere. I don't know if I said that. I was the lead animator on King Candy on Ralph. So I supervised most of the sequences. Some with Marlon. Marlon did some King Candy Ralph shots. But I was the lead animator on that, so I got to work with Eric on building our shapes and stuff for the face and animation style, stuff like that. He did some work. He and I did some work together, and it was really fun. It was really fun.
Was it your decision to have the tongue out all the time with like the lip cut stuff?
Yeah, it was. I mean, it wasn't like the most genius choice, just because it was in the dialogue. Alan Tudyk's dialogue was just like, it was so juicy. You just had to do that,
You want to find some sort of Mad Hatter?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. He was doing kind of a Mad Hatter almost impression.
Yeah.
And that was a character that we had never seen translated into, like, that style had never really been translated into 3D, which was super exciting when I got that assignment, because he was even zanier in like earlier screenings and stuff. It just didn't fit the story. It was kind of out of place. But sorry, hold on, my arcs are getting funky. is getting weird. That's better. Yeah, that he was a super fun character to do. Hard to do in CG because of how far you had to push the rig around. So if you saw, like, if you guys saw the default King Candy model, I'm going to minimize that and that. I minimized it there. He wasn't the most appealing, just because of like the neutrality of what he had to be in order to get everything we needed. I will check it in 3D every once in a while just to make sure I haven't done anything too crazy and the mechanics are reasonable. It's fun. Eventually we'll track. I tend to track everything, even in. I'll do an arc tracking pass, even in blocking, blocking plus. Once we start breaking this down, we'll do kind of an arc tracking pass on all this jazz. Son of a bitch. Okay, we're back. Perfect. It just happens to be on the last frame. Wouldn't you know? That's 9, Zach. Do you guys have any other workflow questions? Shots not like this? Cartoony versus realistic, heavy versus light, subtle versus broad. Anything you guys have ever run into that you want?
When you're doing a cartoony shot where you said you basically do like a bouncing ball and then start layering everything on top of it, is there any time when you should reference for certain parts or details?
Yeah, actually, I will shoot reference for. It depends on whatever the shot calls for. But there are definitely times where, like that Flynn shot, which wasn't cartoony, but it was the bouncing ball method. I shot video reference for certain types of jumps, you know, that I had just kind of flash in my scene, just so I could get sort of specific. Or I'll pull, sometimes I'll pull 2D reference from animated films for certain sections, for like cartoony shots or physical shots. That shot of Flynn before the falling sluice where he's like looking down and then he slides down the waterway or whatever. I mean, Glenn was there, but I looked at Tarzan for that stuff, just as far as like what he did in, like, you know, when he was sliding around on the tree branches and stuff like that. So I will shoot some reference.
But before all that, you get just a basic feeling of the full shot, right? With just
Yeah,
bouncing ball.
yeah, because it's about, for me, it's about the texture of it and kind of that that rhythm, seeing what kind of rhythm you can get out of the shot. Because with cartoony stuff, you get to play with that a little bit more. You know, you can have a little more fun with it and just make broader choices. Where is it? What happened here? That's what I want. This guy. And then figure out how you're going to get from one pose to the next later. It doesn't have to be quite as literal.
So what about for like more subtle shots? Like how do you block that out kind of differently when it's more focused on just their dialogue and expression? You
I usually do like if it's like a super close up, right? I'll do kind of like this, a video, video reference, and kind of a blocking pass like this on the biggest masses, neck, shoulders, head, very loosely, and then I will actually break down the head, neck, chest, shoulder stuff based on where I think I'll have keys in the face, because I want those things to relate. If it's a big open mouth shape or something like that, you want to like make sure you're clearing the room for it, and you never want to, this is a terrible example because that's exactly what I'm doing, but since this is more of a full body shot, it'll be alright. You never want to just blindly do the body and then just layer a face on top, because you might not have set the stage properly for the face. So especially on a closer shot, you'll see in Brent's, you'll want to move the head and the neck to a place where you can craft that entire shape, because it's all about how those pieces relate to one another. But it's a fairly similar approach. Sometimes you have to go to spline, but I usually try not to. I still try to break it down really far, and then I do kind of a nom times. Yeah, let's do it. Perfect, because I just put the last key on the last frame.
Really?
Boom! See how I did that?
Don't forget to save.
Save! Thank you.
Turn off the recording.
You want to record lunch?
We're going to eat upstairs, so just there's a stairway right here. Just go upstairs, a big table, just get settled.